We're live now. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to anybody and everybody that ends up watching the replay or joining us. I see you guys are joining now.
Very cool.
Yeah. Um, we'll get started. You guys just join in. I brought Bernie. I don't know. Let me just do a preface. I started these coffee and conversations because I wanted to have good conversations with people who are wildly passionate about their lives. So I don't know where this is all going. This is just a free flow between two writers, two friends. And if you guys have any questions or insights or anything, like I said before, and I'll mention that later as more people join, just drop them in the chat box, and Bernie and I will try to answer them and talk to you guys as well and bring you in the conversation. So Bernie, my man, thank you for being here with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I love our conversations, and those people we've never met in person,
I know.
but I mean, I don't think it matters, but it's
Mhm.
a thing, right? And I was trying to think how we actually met, and it's probably a story in there, but I think we've grown to become friends, and I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. Like the last couple of conversations we had weren't like this. It was just we just jumped up and talked for 2 hours.
I know.
The thing in
Yeah, and that's pretty much what this conversation. I wanted to bring Bernie on for you guys because I think, like him and I were talking before we went live here, our audience he's a writer on Substack. And Bernie, if you want at any point, you can drop your Substack in the chat so people can take a look at it or
I don't
subscribe. I'll do it. I'll drop it in there. I'll drop it in there. But we both have similar outlooks on how we see the world. And so I kind of put that out in the note that I put out today. That was the first question I was going to ask you, which you're like, I don't know if I'm going to answer. I'm like, did you find the wonder, or did the wandering and the wondering find you? Like, how did that all start for you and coming into fruition and coming into your writing?
It's such a great question, and I'll preface it by saying, like, so last night I'm trying to think, like, what we're gonna talk about, and I'm always like, I can't wait to talk to you because I know it's gonna go deep.
Yeah.
Uh, like, I have this thing about, like, small talk. Like, I don't wanna talk small talk. Like,
I know.
I'll talk for, like, and, like, all this crazy shit that, like, whether yeah, it's yeah, whether it's but, so when I saw that this morning, I'm like, "That's perfect, that's perfect," and I was like, my immediate answer
Yeah.
my immediate answer, and this and it could change. It might change by the end of this conversation,
Yeah.
uh, but I think I found it because it's always there. Like, wonder doesn't find us, wonder is always there. And so I think as a kid, I had that eye, that view, uh,
Mhm.
and as people will find out, we both have had traumatic brain injuries, and that shifted me back to recapturing that perspective and to find it again. Um, I don't know that I ever completely lost it.
Mhm.
Definitely was going down a path where I was less aware of it. And yeah, I would say over time I found it, and a lot of it. I mean, my Substack is called "Wander in the Wonder." Um, is that exactly it? Wander in the Wonder. Yeah,
Here, let me Google it and find it.
and and after a traumatic brain injury, uh, what happens is a brain injury creates gaps.
Yeah.
Like, and for me to reconnect, and I didn't know this at the time, and it took me years and years and years. My TBI was in the year 2000, so it tells you how long I've had to figure this out. But a lot of my reconnections was through wandering, both physically and mentally and spiritually. Like it just like I just had to take, and I always call it the scenic route. Um, that's what I had to do to reconnect to things in my past but see it in a new way, in a new wonder, and find that wonder that way.
You know what's funny is you're talking to me and I didn't even realize this. Today is my actual brain injury anniversary.
No,
Yeah, I didn't even realize it until you brought that up, and I'm like, "When did mine happen?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, it was April 20th, 2014."
like
So
18,
yeah, so today was that day when I think about it, what, 12 years ago, I was laying in ICU, you know what I
cra-
mean? And to your point, it does, for those of you that don't know, traumatic brain injuries can I had a 1% chance of survival. Bernie's was pretty significant, and it rearranged my whole life, my whole identity, everything. I lost a lot, and I would say I gained a lot. I would say now it's one of the greatest blessings of my life, but at back then, um, it was a tough road, and it does create these gaps. And I think what's interesting and something you inspired me, but something I also saw was I remember another brain injury survivor at the retreat. He was teaching himself. He was in his 20s, had a stroke, and he couldn't use his right hand. And I think you and I have talked about this. And I would go in every morning, and he was teaching himself how to draw with his other hand, his non-dominant hand, because he couldn't use his other hand. And I think what that brings me to is how writing and art and creativity can help something like that, that there are these huge gaps, bring you kind of back to a connectedness where you feel so disconnected. So what made you like, and I know that's part of yours, and and that was true when I wrote it, you inspired me to get back to writing because you really took on writing to the heart. You want to talk about that?
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I didn't know that until you wrote that a couple days ago. And I'm so honored with that because you're one hell of a writer, and it's been exciting to follow you, and to know that is just like that's a shot to the um uh, question. I'm talking about
Writing, and like you said, it creates brain injuries, create these gaps, and writing kind of
so,
helped you fill in that.
yeah. So for those that don't know, like I've been a creative person my whole life. I've been drawing since I was my first childhood memory of drawing was 6 years old. So I've always done it. I've gone on the path of graphic design. That's my career, and so it's in me. And after my brain injury, I went to drawing more and more.
Mhm.
Luckily, I was still able to do that. It was different. I approached it differently. I drew a little bit differently. I would say now I draw a lot differently. That's a horrible sentence, but
It works, man, it works.
so I think, I mean, looking at it in hindsight. In hindsight, I was looking for something, like something to help me get back to that kid, or that perspective. And it took a while for me to it's a much, much longer story. I eventually found a way to writing.
Yeah.
And once I started that, and once I started my first book, that's when everything shifted. And and I say that now, it's like that is wonder to me. Like the way that there was some sort of cognitive development that happened when I started writing that changed everything uh ab about the way I viewed the world. Like it just, like, everything came together, and I became more of who I think I was destined to be. And there's just such a healing quality to writing that I didn't know about that. And I think it took me probably past that first book.
Mhm.
uh, Um, and I tried to, like, it changed my perspective constantly. And my second book is a lot about that. It's a lot about the changing your perspective to see things a different way. Um, and that wandering and all that. But the writing was the magic bullet.
I don't think people realize, and that's something, and it's funny because the reason you inspired me was I used to be a really good writer. And I could spell really well and all that in college, but after my brain injury, like, I just struggled with spelling or, and I know you know the history, I'm not gonna go into it, but, I didn't even know the word for pen. I had to really retrain my brain to do a lot of things, and I think when I talked to you and saw how you were able to use the words, I was letting my own fear of, right, like, I can't even spell correctly, or I can't even, like, I would try to, and I still struggle with that a little bit, and that's okay, I just don't let it stop me because I know, like, I'll look at it and go, like, "That's not how that word is spelled." But it's like, I just keep flowing, and I've just learned that our brains are so flexible and malleable, and getting back to writing has really leveled me up in a way that I wasn't expecting, to your point, and seeing you do it and talking to you and reading your books and didn't watching that was like, "Okay, well, if he can do it, right, I can do it." It's just gonna take me some time to find my voice, and that's why when I started Substack, I didn't tell anybody. I was
Mm,
scared, like, I didn't want really anybody reading my stuff.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It was like, let me just get out there and see if I can write. And I didn't have the big audience. And so the more I started writing, you're right, the perspective changed. My brain grew. I don't know, something happened. And I think whether you have a brain injury or not, as writers, I don't know if that's a gift that we take for granted, right? Like how writing and sitting down and going, I get to do this and I get to help. And it really does help your brain.
absolutely.
And I don't know if anybody else really notices that when they're writing, or if that's just a you and I thing because we've had it taken away to where we realize, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really good question. But yeah, I totally get that.
If any of you guys that are joining our writers and have any perspective on that or want to share, please feel free. Drop
w-
it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you because I think it's a gift. And to your point, it really helped you get to where you are.
well, I think you pointed it like when something that gets taken away from you,
Yeah.
I think you realize the value in it when that happens, and like that was my biggest uh, side effect of my brain injury was reading. I went through speech therapy, and like you said, you look at a word and you're like, "There's
Right.
oh, is that right?" And it's funny because I sat there. I remember sitting there with the speech therapist, and she's like, "Yes, you will pick up on it because deep down, something in your instincts knows that it'll
Mm,
know." And that's an interesting thing about instincts and everything, like or intuition, is like as you learn that stuff again, your brain kind of forgets how you learned it,
yeah.
but knows like something, and it's pretty interesting.
It really is. You bring up a good point because you do know that. Like I knew even. And I couldn't get, like, the speech therapy and all that. I had to kinda do it on my own because I didn't have healthcare coverage, and that's a whole other story, which I've written about. You guys can check it out. It's in Substack. But, I had to rely a lot on intuition and not even really even knowing it at that time that that was intuition. It was just like, "This isn't right," or "This doesn't feel right," or "This is go with this." You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get that, and I was like that. And I appreciate you saying, like, I just like, you looked up to the way I did, the writing and all that, and I would say, like, a lot of my path after that injury, that's the way I was. I was just like, I know this is where I'm supposed to be. Why this is my path. It was a struggle to get there, to get to that knowing, but once you know, you just knew,
Did
and
you ever question yourself, though? Because we get that too. It's like, "Okay, well, that's crazy."
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I eventually moved back to my, near where I grew up because I just knew that I needed to be there.
Yeah.
I just knew it. There was like everything was pointing in that direction. Um, and that didn't come out of writing, but it came out of a lot of other creative activities. Yeah.
Was there anything that you were ever scared to publish?
I'm scared to publish my next book.
Why? You've already published two. You've done a you've done a coloring book for adults, which is amazing, by the
Yeah.
way.
Eh, I'm well, I should say I was nervous. I'm at a point now that I'm just like, yeah, it's, like, I will publish it, and I'll still be nervous about it, but it's just much deeper, more personal than
Mhm,
books, and my other books are pretty personal.
mhm,
Goes deeper, and for those that don't know, like, about a year after my TBI, I was diagnosed with leukemia. And so that struggle, like that whole story has never really been told uh,
yeah,
publicly. I held on to that story for the longest time, and I'm still holding on to it. Um, and I didn't want the sympathy or anything like that, and so I always kept that as a secret. And now there's again, we're gonna go like the wonder in like writing, because I had so the next book is based on a story,
mhm,
and story happened at the same time I had the leukemia diagnosis, and it was a month before 9/11.
wow,
And so that happened, and I had a cross country trip planned at the same time. So all of that happened at once. And that memory has always been in my head, like, after my second book came out, that memory just kept coming back, coming back, and coming back, and coming back. And I did in my first book, there's a small chapter on faith, and that actually gives you a little glimpse of what the story's about. Um, and I forgot where I was going with that. Uh,
you're scared to write this book or to publish this book.
as I started to write, so I'm like, what do I do, right? What do I do with that memory? Start writing it down. So that was the first step. Like, what is it about this story that is important,
Mm,
right? And so I started writing, and this was probably maybe 2 years ago. I started writing it out, and as it developed, I realized that that story is the origin of my spiritual journey.
oh,
That,
wow.
that's where things started, uh, and it wasn't complete. Like, I wrote the whole story out, and it wasn't complete. So I had and part of that story is that it happened during 9/11. So I never did the full cross country trip. It got
Mhm,
traded and only went to Grand Canyon and came back. Um, so I finished that trip last year.
oh, wow.
And that kind of brings it all together. But yeah, that story, and it again, when something gets taken away from you, you realize the value in it. And I had the fear back then that I was gonna pass away. There was a likelihood that the leukemia I had, the solution at the time um was a bone marrow biopsy. That was the solution. And the the recovery on that is pretty low. And but at the same time, a medication came out, like at the
Mhm,
and I call it the miracle drug. So like all of that happened. It's just like I had to get it out of me to understand it more. That to me, like, and I keep thinking to myself, like, after this book, I don't know that I have anything else to write about. Like,
yes, I think every writer thinks that, though. I think at some point we all go through that, right? And are like, I don't know if I had, like that blank, what do I write about?
but I would say that at the end of my second book, and then this memory kept coming to me, kept poking at me, and like it was so persistent that I had to start writing about it. And the same thing probably will happen, but I do see this as kind of like the end, like a bookend to those. Like it's a trilogy now. Like
Right.
I have 2 books. This will be the trilogy, and then I do see that like this. I'm done writing about myself.
Well, and that's a good point, right? Because I think a lot of people, and I know I'm not trying to get into that topic, but with AI and everything else, everybody's like, well, that's just going to make, get rid of writers and artists. And I actually have a different opinion about that. I think you're going to see more of a renaissance of artists. And because, to your point, nobody has your experience, nobody has your voice, nobody has, like, you can't replicate that. And we're gonna be hungry for that I want human stuff. It's like, I'm already hungry for that. Like, stuff I buy is small businesses and handmade and you know what I mean? It's like, I want that human touch. I want that human imperfection and flaws. So, I think for you to even how do you even get over, like you said yourself? Because some people feel like, well, I shouldn't or can't write about themselves because they think it's too egoic or it's too, you know what I mean? Nobody's gonna care. Like, how do you know innately, like, no, this story needs to come out?
I don't know. That's a good question. I will say that when I was writing my first book, I do remember like the reason I wanted to write the book is to help others see the world differently, and that was the main purpose. And I remember thinking like if I can get this book in front of at least one person and have them be affected by it and change that one person, it's a success to me. And I've been lucky. It's been it's compounded that 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 hope. But that was the initial reason. Like I feel like I feel like the universe has given me some sort of a gift on the way I see things now.
Mhm.
And when you are given a gift to that magnitude, it's hard to keep it to yourself. It's
Yeah.
impossible to keep it to yourself. And I think in one of the last times we talked about like what our purpose in life is, and because that becomes part of faith, and like it keeps me going and keeps me creating. But I think the purpose of why I'm here is not to just create, but to share that creation.
Yeah. I
Which
feel you.
can be the hard.
Well, it is because as writers, as artists, as creators, right, you're exposing your soul and saying, here is who I am, judge me.
Yeah, and you're really good at that. You're every once in a while I'll read your stuff and I'll be like, damn, it just it hits you. And and I think that's important that we all know that we're all human, we're all here going through the same shit, and but there is a silver lining. There is a good side of the sun will always come up, all those metaphorical things.
I think because for me, to your point, when I had my brain injury, it was like I felt so unseen and so alone. And it was like, if I can do something, write something, create something when I worked with a community that can I make one person in this world feel seen and not have to go what I went through,
Mm,
then me surviving was worth it. And at the time, I think it beyond that now, right? Like, just living is worth it. But in my darkest time, and that's right, the grocery store stories and all that. That's what that was. It was like, if I can make one other person just feel seen when everybody else seems, and they may even not feel seen, or if they feel ignored, or they feel, then that's it. That's it. That's just what hits me. And I think that was something on Substack when I came on here that I wasn't expecting, was not only the stories that I wrote, but how many comments of people were sharing with each other
mm,
and sharing their stories and seeing each other. Like, I remember telling Cassandra one night, I was reading all the comments and I was literally in tears, and not from sadness, just like you said, my heart was so touched just by everybody, like, talking and communicating. It was like, I even told her, I'm like, I don't know that I can take much more of this.
mm.
Right? Like, which is a beautiful, like,
But I get it. Sometimes we can be a little too exposed, and
yes. I felt very raw and I was just like, I got to put this down. Like, I can't, not in a bad way, but I just had to step away and like ground, because I was just like, this is just, I don't even know if there's a thing of too much love, but it felt like this is what it feels like to have so much love just around you. It wasn't even directed necessarily at me. It was just around me.
Mhm,
Does that make sense?
totally. totally. And if we can be even a small part of that, it's worth it.
Right, and I think there's so many writers on Substack and stuff, and that's why when I say, like, write your authentic voice, write your story, because as much as we think it's not needed or, nobody will see it is, like, there's somebody out there that can relate to you in a way that you think you can't or can, or you know what I mean? Like, there's somebody needs to read your story. Somebody needs to read your experience. Somebody needs to read your poem, your fiction, somebody needs what you have. And I think that is something that AI can never replace. And not that I'm against AI. I think it's a great tool for things, but
It is totally a tool, and I do have hope that it does open up things for people.
yeah.
I use it primarily for proofreading and that type of stuff. I'm a one man shop, so like I just send it to that and be like, tell me how this sounds or something like that. So it gives you a different perspective, and I'm all about different perspectives. But in the end, it's all you.
Right. And that's the essence of the story, right? It's like it's all you, and finding that wonder and figuring it out and going, yes, this is worth writing about. And you don't have to. And it was funny. After the last conversation, somebody said, like, yeah, I'd like to talk, but I'm not famous. And I'm like, I'm not famous. I'm not looking for famous. I mean, I'm not, right? Like, we don't have to be famous. Like, it's just connection and other writers and other perspectives. And hearing that, I think for you, I remember in your last book, and I know you guys wouldn't know this, but I would, and we talked briefly before we came live about it, was hearing landscapes. And that, yeah, I have Bernie's, which you guys can't see, but back here is actually Bernie's artwork um, hanging up there, that I look at every day that inspires me. And that line always stuck with me because it was like, what a way to see the world in a way that we don't normally talk about it that way. Like,
Mhm.
what made you write that?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, it was it probably came out of the moment of writing, but in that second book, I do write a lot about the senses. I have another chapter. Well, yeah, there's another chapter called "Seeing the Voices,"
Mhm.
and I was dealing a lot with how do I explain that? So
It's okay. We got time.
it's a great question, though. How do I explain that? Oh, I mean, we'll get back to the TBI stuff. So I lost some senses after, like my smell and my taste were really off. My taste is mostly back. My smell weird. I say I'm hard of smelling, which is fairly accurate, but it's also some things I smell too well. And things like that. Again, you find the value in whatever it is when you get it back. And I think when you start to really pay attention to all those senses and start paying attention to everything around you, you start to pick up some sort of a sixth sense. And I think that phrase probably relates to that.
Mm,
Like you're stepping outside of whatever sense it, and it's blending to a different sense. Does that make sense? So it's almost like it's graduating to a different
mhm.
dimension. Sense. Um, that's how it feels. Um, I will say my next book is actually called "Seeing the Voices," and it deals. The whole book primarily deals with faith and faith in creativity and faith in what I write about, and faith in inspiration and a lot of hearing landscape and seeing the voices come from what speaks to me, what what touches you know, those things. Um, and yeah, so it's such a great question that I have a hard time getting to the point, but hopefully that made some sort of sense.
No, it makes sense. I mean, I get it because again, we have that. I lost my taste and smell. I still don't have them. All I can taste is berries. So, and 90% of my hearing in my left ear. So I have a hearing aid. So I lost almost three senses.
Mm,
So I remember going to this meditation retreat in Vermont, and we were doing a Dothan, which is, I may have pronounced that wrong. It was like an art Dothan, but you meditate like the monks do. You eat like they do, but it was a creative one. And I remember sitting, we had like mentors, and she was actually a professional storyteller, and we couldn't talk. We were in noble silence the whole week. So you have to communicate with these people without words. So it was a fascinating experience. I was there a week, and I remember sitting across from her when we were eating and talking about how I can't taste or smell, and she was saying, then to your point, then maybe the way you ingest food now is through eyes or touch.
mm, mm,
And to your point, I had really not considered that because I'm like, people are always like, well, how does it taste? I'm like, I don't know. I can't, and you don't remember. You really don't remember what it tastes. You remember, for me, you remember that you liked it, but you don't remember what it tasted like.
yeah,
I don't know if that's similar to you. So I've had to learn to use my other senses, because let's face it, that's the one thing that makes me sad is to travel to other countries and know I could never experience that country
mm,
if I did through their food. At least not the way everybody else does. Right? And so I think it does make you hone in, and especially as creatives and writers, and go, okay, these senses aren't here, but how is it a different perspective and a different way I'm experiencing or seeing that? And can I now find joy in that?
yeah. Obviously, I mean, it's resilience, right?
I
It's like
know. And I'm so sick of that word.
in the resilience because and you find some other path and you wander to something else. I think that um as artists, I think I mean, how how often you're like overly positive or like you're too positive or I get that a lot as an artist. And I think that's just part of our makeup is because we always see possibilities in things. And so when some sort of road, block happens, we shift to something else.
That's a good question. I don't know that I've ever been told I'm overly positive, but I have been told or asked, like, how do you have such a good outlook on life and all that you've been through?
That's a better way to put it.
You know what I mean? And it was like, well, because I realized, like, I remember after my injury, I was like, yes, this sucks. Yes, this is horrible. All the things. My entire life blew up. Everything I knew about myself went away at the age of 41. Right? I can't work the way I did. I mean, everything just got destroyed at once. And so you're like, how do I even fit in? How do I even communicate? How do I even function? But I realized the one thing I realized, and even joining support groups, and they would always complain about the same things. And I was like, yes, but that's not helping me move forward. And so if this is who I am now, and I can't do anything about it, I can't taste, I can't smell, I can't hear all these things. My brain isn't remembering a lot of words. I know it'll change. I know over time it's going to take a long time. But how do I move forward? And it was finding those groups of people. Right? It wasn't denying that I was sad or depressed or, angry at times. I went through all that, and I didn't bypass it because I feel like that was a big part of the journey and allowing myself to sit in that, but I didn't want to live there.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And I used to tell my TBI group when I ran it, was like, you got to walk down Sad Street, but you don't want to set up shop here.
Yes. So
You know what I mean? It's like you got to go around. You got to go down it. You can't go around the block. You can't, try to fly over, jump over. You can't do that. But you got to walk down there. But you don't want to live there.
yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think
I relate it to fairy tales. It's like you gotta walk through the dark forest.
right, right. But eventually, you don't want to live in the dark forest. It's like you
Unless you
right. And I think as artists, that's there is that perspective of, if this is who I am now, how do I make the best of it? How do I thrive? How do I live my life? Because I was, I had a 1% chance of survival. I should have technically not been here. And yet I felt like I was given this huge gift to live again. And I'm like, I know I wasn't meant to live like this, like, depressed and angry and sad. And I know I got to work through all that, but I know I didn't survive for this. So what did I, and I just never saw the point of, I don't want to say wallowing, because I don't want to put anybody else down who's going through anything, and everybody deals with things differently. And I'm not saying my way is the right way. I'm just sharing my experience, right? But I didn't want to wallow in it. I wanted to figure out, how do I adapt? That's why I didn't really believe in recovery.
Billions.
I know. That's why I hate that word. Resilient got overused and I just got sick of it. But
This thing that, like, when I like, I'm so, I was always like a bit of a, I don't know, just a prankster and stuff as a kid. So that's still in me. So like, I'm just gonna give you a hard time. I'm gonna send you every once in a while. I'm gonna send you that word.
it's a good, it just got over. Listen, when I first launched my coaching company, which I called it the Resilience Alchemist. So I was all about the resilience bandwagon. And then I just got sick of it, because I was like, you know what? I don't want to be this resilient.
Well, let's talk about words you do like.
Yeah. I mean, I love all kinds of words now.
Not even the way it sounds.
Well, adapt.
Adapt.
Adapt is one of my absolute favorite words. And quickly, to Deborah asked, do you ever have phantom senses, like someone who's lost a limb and the phantom pain? I don't. I don't. That's a good question, though. That's a really good question. I don't have that. I don't know if you do
I
with
do.
anything. Yeah. But I like adapt because it felt possible, versus healing or recovery made it seem like you're going back to who you are. And you're
Mm,
not. Anybody who's had a brain injury, and I don't care, and I don't really anything, you're never going back to who you were. But we never are as human beings every day, whether you've had trauma or an injury or not. We're changing every day. So you don't really recover or heal, meaning like back to where you were. So, and I'm not, that was my perspective. I'm not saying everybody else needs to agree with that. But so for me, it felt like a mountain I'm never going to climb, like
mm,
I'm never going to get over. So if I said, can I adapt and thrive
yeah.
like I am now, there was possibility in that,
I
right?
like,
It's like, I don't have to go back to who I was. I can be who I am, and I got to find a new way of,
yeah. And I think I related. I say pivoting a lot.
mm, yes.
That's like, I say that a lot in my work and stuff, because that's just the nature of it. But I do see that in life quite often. Things like get thrown at you and then I pivot and whatever. But adapt is even better, probably.
No, I like them both because I think they go hand in hand. In order to adapt, you have to pivot. And I think that's what I've even done with my writing, right? Like, if I look at what I was writing about on Substack a year ago, I'm not writing about that same thing anymore. And I've grown, I've adapted.
Yeah.
And my writing, I feel like, should pivot with me. I don't want to be writing about the same things if it's not calling to me right now.
Yeah, and I was listening to your last conversation with Sherry, and I remember you saying that, and I relate to that so much. So my first book was Find Wonder in the Ordinary, and everybody expected a wonder book and Wonder Boy or something like that. And I started writing that second book with that in mind, and the universe didn't want me to write that book. It wanted me to write the book that I wrote. And I love artists that do that, that shift and recreate themselves. I love David Bowie for that reason. I like Prince, and like those artists to me, like really they're following their ear or following whatever is speaking to them. Paul Simon does the same thing. Um, but I love that adapting to whatever is speaking to us. I think that.
Well, and you said like that wasn't the book the universe wanted you to write. How did you know that?
Well, the book eventually became about that. So the book is called "The Curious Reality and Imagination," and as I was writing that book, um, I call them clues and confirmations. So clues will appear for me, not like magically appear. Um, but I'll like things will come up in my life that will um, suggest something or a direction, and then I'll get a confirmation later. I can tell the story at the story at the beginning of that book. I was in Iceland, and I had
Mhm.
crazy like adventurous moment where I was kind of lost, and it was nighttime, but the sun wasn't setting in Iceland, so it was this weird dynamic. And it was that trip was supposed to be like a celebration or a completion of the book, but then that trip, I was like, well, I think there's a blend of reality and imagination.
Mm.
And when I had that thought, I'm like, well, maybe that's what I'm really writing about. But I was like, well, I don't know if I that's pretty thing. And like, I don't even know how I can explain that. But I did write a book that pretty much was that. Um, but it didn't have that story at the start of it. And then right after that, I was in um a grocery store, like when I came back, and bumped into somebody who asked how my trip was and all this stuff. And then she asked, did I go down the road that um, Ben Stiller went down in the movie? What is it called? The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Okay.
That movie, it's great. It's really great. And so I was like, I don't know that I went down that road. So I ended up watching the movie, and the road that he goes down in that movie was the same road I was on when I had like this epiphany in Iceland. And like that's a confirmation of the clue right there.
Mhm.
Like that's a huge one. Like so I buckled up and rewrote most of the book for that reason.
That's pretty impressive, and I think that's key too is, like, because people will ask, like, "How do I know?" And it's like, if you're paying attention, like you're doing, and right? Like, someone mentions a movie and you watch it, it's that follow through and going, "Oh," like, I've had that happen a lot lately of like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is the clue. It's leading me down the path of, hey, write this."
Yes. But you don't necessarily know it at the time, right? Like
No.
you just follow it and you follow what the universe is putting out for you. So it's like, well, and there are times this might have been one of those times where I'll actually say to myself, well, the universe is telling me something.
Mhm.
I have to I have to follow that clue to something. Sometimes it ends up being nothing, but that one was like a big confirmation at the end of it. Uh, and yeah, it's it becomes a game. It's playing, right? I mean,
Yes.
most of what I do as far as writing and drawing and stuff is playing, and this is playing in life. So that's where reality and imagination intersect for me.
And I think that's true for everybody and to some degree, right? Because we're typically like, I know for me, I'm writing about what I'm experiencing and from my perspective, and it is magical. And and I do kind of immerse myself in that moment. I was writing a note this morning that that'll come out. And it's like, I think about things people probably don't think about, and they're probably dumb. And I think they're dumb to other people, which it's proven they're not when you put them out there in Substack and go, yes, other people are immersing in our world. And I think and I'd be wondering your perspective on that because I think we've become so immersed in phones and worlds that aren't in front of us. And I think I'm seeing more people get more immersed in the world in front of them than wanting to go away from it anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I I definitely see that as well. Yeah, I don't know that I have much more to.
Because I guess my point is that's where your wander and wonder come in.
Yeah,
Because if you start to be curious and wonder about your neighborhood, your local community, your local coffee shop, and just people watch or pay attention, or a random person comes up and says something. It's usually not random, or you see something there's to your point, the universe is giving you messages all the time. Whether you're following them or not is up to you. And are you paying attention? And to your point, it could just be that, hey, go to this beach and go see, and you see a great sunset with amazing dolphins,
Right.
right? And that might end up leading you to write or have a feeling or something that isn't even related to the beach and the dolphins, but it invoked something in you in a memory that allowed something to come out of you. And I think that's where we're all bringing our reality and mixing it into our imagination to going, oh, well, that sparked something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I say in the book, and I say it many times, that the world can be a pretty loud place,
Yeah.
but as soon as we take a second, and it sounds kind of trite that you slow down, smell the roses. Yes, that's part of it. But disconnect yourself from your phone, put it down, go for a walk, and that's when the wonder will appear. It will find you. You could say that. You can say it finds you that way. But like we said earlier, I think it's always there. I think it's just for us that we just need to slow it down.
Yeah. Cause I find like even just living here, I've had more things happen in my backyard,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
squirrels coming on the screen to me like almost being able to touch them, to rabbits being like things that are unexplainable. And yet the more I seek out the wonder, the
Yeah.
more I seem to find it.
And I'm pretty sure a bird told me it was spring today.
Yes.
Office, and there's a tree right there. And a bird, honestly, I'd never had a bird come so close to the window as it did this morning. And I'm like, son of a bitch. Spring. He just told me it was spring.
Well, and that's right, and it seems silly, but I think it's what we're all wanting, more connection in one way or form. And I think that was something that grocery store stories really kind of brought in on my Substack and showed me is, I took this simple moment and thought, this is silly, nobody's going to care, and not to talk about it ad nauseum, but it really showed me how much connection around the world.
Yeah.
There was people around the world commenting and sharing stories and doing things, and it was like, wow, that's what really hit my heart, was like, we all really have more in common than we realize.
Yeah. We're all seeking, I gonna sound silly, but I think we're all seeking some sort of hope. And
Yeah.
I think when we dial it down a little bit, we find it. And we find it in those smaller things.
Well, and that's where I think somebody's writing, somebody's poem, somebody's photography, somebody's art piece, somebody's can bring that. I had a great conversation with a photographer because I posted a note about the old ways of wanting to, I want a film camera. I want to go back to slower, methodical creating. I want to, not take 40 shots of something because it's digital and look and find the best one. Can I take one or two like we did with film? Because you didn't have 40 shots on film,
Right.
right? You had whatever you had, and luckily you got it. And it ended up having this great conversation with another photographer guy on Substack that I didn't even really know. And now he's like, hey, we follow each other and talking, and his work is amazing. And it's like, wow, he inspired me to really look more into film. And I think that's where, if for me personally, if you think nobody cares, because it can feel like that on Substack, that nobody's listening, nobody's reading. And I get it. I was there. Yeah, I was there, but they are.
Mhm.
That's the one thing about the Substack community I realize is we're more readers and kind of behind the scenes people than we are like, hey, I'm going to jump in and ask a question, or hey, I'm going to talk out loud, which is fine. They'll make the comments. So they may not like it and comment, but they're reading it. And you just don't know who you changed, who you made smile, who you inspired by your poem or by your story or by your piece of art. And I think as artists, that's, I don't know, for you, I mean, I think, like you said, you didn't even know that you inspired me to write.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I did not know that. But I think somebody wrote in here seeking connection. I think that's a big part of it. Um, or it could be the part of it. Like we're all seeking some sort of connection with something. And I jokingly say, like, I feel more connected to people when I'm not around them. Uh, me being the writer, introverted artist weirdo that I am, but uh, whatever I do to make that connection is what is needed. And my connection, my way to make friends and stuff is through my art and what I create. Um, and I think a lot of artists feel that way. We want some sort of connection with something, and I think uh, personally, and I think you feel the same way, is that we've been given the chance to find that um, on a different plane, on a different level, uh, not on a physical level, which I find I light up when I talk about that stuff. Uh,
Yeah.
I think there is a network within us all. There is a connection between us all. We're all somehow connected, and whether it's part of Substack or whatever it is, I think there's something under it, something
Yeah.
under the surface that is it is a network of sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we're always energy is energy. And, whether you believe in that stuff or not, you can look that up scientifically. We're all energy and energy interacts with energy. And at the end of the day, you are connected, whether you feel it or not, or whether you're paying attention or not, it's there. And why not participate in it? Why not connect more to it? You know? I think when you're opening yourself to those things, I don't know, I just have some of the most amazing I meet the most amazing people, I have the most amazing experiences, and, I remember I went to the gas station a couple days ago, or it was about a month ago, I shouldn't say it was a couple days ago, that was bad, but it was about a month ago when I was thinking about it, but it was when and this dude, like, hit me, it was a while ago, actually. Football season. I'm thinking football just ended. Time for me is, like, going so fast, I can't believe we're at the end of March.
I know. I know.
But we were in a gas station, I was with Cassandra, and the dude just came in and, like, punched me in the shoulder and was like, "Hey, man, great game that they did." And she's like, "Random strangers punch you?" Like, what is but it was like, "Hey, yeah, thanks." But it was like it was just a moment, but it was connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, he felt like saying something and lit up, and I was like, "Yeah, cool." And, you left each other's name and kinda just laughed, and I was like, "That was cool." That's a cool moment of just, like, breath and joy.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we just it's those moments that I seek out more than, like, the big aha moments, and I think that's the wandering. So for you, you embody that in such a way that I'm just like, "Okay. I like how he sees things because that like I said, that hearing landscapes really drew me in, and for you to bring that to Substack, I was super excited. And I know we talked about this too, and that may be something you wanna talk about is writing for Substack versus writing a book.
Yeah, and we connected very briefly before we went live, and I did say I appreciate the invite because I'm not on Substack as much as I was, and it's just because my lifestyle shifted, and not lifestyle, but my life and elements of my life shifted, but also I gravitate more to writing. Well, I'm writing a book now, and I think that interests me more. I'm not sure if interest is the right word, but I feel drawn more to this bigger picture book that has all this stuff kind of involved in it, um, rather than the stuff that I've been putting or have put on Substack. Um, and it's just it's and this was it's only been I mean it's honestly I think I kind of dialed things down maybe 9 or 10 months ago
Mhm.
as a year, but um, there is stuff on my Substack from that time that is a little bit more involved. But it's just a different it's just a different time of my life where I'm not gravitating towards that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you said in your last took a couple weeks off, and it's just like that's how things were speaking to you, how you were hearing the landscape, and how you were seeing the voices. And I said at the beginning of this, my opinion might change on my answers by the end because I don't even know where things are going to go at the beginning of the day.
Right.
My perspective will shift as the day progresses. Um, and so things living on Substack for me, those are like little captions. And lately, it hasn't opened.
It's a pivot.
It's a pivot, and
And I think as writers, we have to allow ourselves to do that and understand. And that's why I'm saying, I've changed what I'm writing. And some people that goes against a lot of the gurus on there, of whatever, how to grow your Substack and how to do all that. And it's like, but I want to write authentically.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's probably where my mind is at. I don't feel like when I get on Substack, I start looking at the numbers and people liking it and all that stuff. I'm like, I don't want to write for that. I'm not
You can hide that now.
oh, that'd be awesome.
I did. I actually did hide that. You can hide your subscriber counts in your dashboard so you don't see them.
That would be cool. Um, but still, there is something that changes when you're writing for an app as opposed to writing for yourself. And ultimately, yes, what I write for myself becomes for everyone. But I like the process that takes where I'm get it to a point where I'm like, okay, now everyone can.
It's interesting that you look at it, and I'm not saying it's bad when you're saying writing for an app, because I don't look at it that way. It's like I'm writing for the people I want to read, and that this is just a platform where I get to share it. So, but to your point, I understand where it can feel that way. So I'm not saying like I'm right and you're wrong. So I don't want anybody to get that. I'm saying it's an interesting and different perspective, because I think that's why they came out with, when you start getting caught up in the numbers, and that's why it's not that I don't care about my subscriber count or the people that are there. It's like I don't want that to be the driving force of why I'm writing.
I think that's what I'm trying to say. Like I purposely got on Substack because of the ability to have an email, like a e-newsletter or whatever you want to call it. I have certain things and events and stuff that I want to get out there, and that's primarily the reason I'm on there. Um, and that kind of grew into like I love to write. I love to write, and I love to share it. So, as I got into it, that's where it went. And then, like I said, I have a life is different now, and then it's just perspectives change. You adapt and pivot, and things went a different way. Um, but yeah, but I do see like, and eventually myself personally, as I start writing the notes, I start I'm starting to think like, well, that'll get a lot of like. I don't want to think that way because I want to keep it authentic, like you said,
Right.
out of me. I want it to come through me, if really.
And
Um,
I think that's the balance of, and I don't know if people talk about that a lot, is how do you balance that, the likes versus what you're writing? And I think that would be more helpful for writers to say, yes, let's face it, we want everybody we would like our work to be seen and read, where I'm not just, that's not a bad thing, but it's like, how do you not chase the algorithm and the likes and all that and go, yes, I want to get out there, but I also want to make sure I'm writing with the intention of why I'm writing and not to go viral, which is something I know Sherry and I talked about. you know, yes, I've had notes go viral. Do I know the formula to make them go viral? Yes. Do I use that formula? No. If you go look at some of my notes now, some have 30 likes, some have 20, some have 100. It's like, because that's not the point to me, right? It's building. I came on to write, to be a better writer, and what was a blessing that I wasn't prepared for was the community.
mm,
It really, I left all the other social platforms pretty much. I mean, I'm still on Instagram, but barely. I left Facebook because the community on Substack just has blown my mind. The community that I have found on there, the new friends that I've made through there, the other writers and creatives I've gotten to work with or collaborate with or even just talk to, like that, I wasn't expecting. And I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful landscape to do that if that's something that intrigues you. And it's not for everyone because not everybody's a writer on there. A lot of people just read.
And that's okay.
Right. And that's fantastic because where else can you connect with your readers in such a personal way that you get to chit chat and talk to them and hear about their lives? Like, to me, that's the gift. And so for me, it's not about necessarily the numbers, but how do I nurture that?
Mm,
Right. Because they inspire me to keep writing,
yeah.
and that I wasn't expecting.
Part being a I can't be a writer without people reading what you write. I mean, but, like, to me, um, I thank people, like, quite a bit, like, for being faithful to whatever I write. Like, that to me, it's like, that is such a blessing.
Yeah.
That is a blessing to have people actually read it, get something out of it, and give back that energy to you. Like, that blows my mind when that happens. And I'm blessed to have that happen more often than not. Yeah, that is
It's the wonder. You know what I mean? And that to me was the greatest wonder that I found on there. It was like, wow, okay. And I think that's you have to keep your mind, you have to have a mindset. And again, that's why I turned off the numbers. It's not that I don't care. I do. But sometimes I can care too much. And that's not why I'm writing. And that's not about, I care more about my comments and interacting with the people who are reading, right, than I do about.
that is the best part. Like, I love when I get somebody that wants to talk about what was written. Like, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
that's payment. Like, I don't need any sort of monetary value. I want in it again, go back. It's a connection. You want that. That's what you want.
Well, and that's to me, right? Like, so that is what keeps the platform fresh. It keeps me inspired. It keeps me going because it's like the connection, it's the community. It's like, let me focus on that because that's really what's driving me. So, and I understand it's different for other people who are coaching and selling products or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying personally for me, that's not, it's about the connection and that inspires work for my work more than anything else,
Mhm.
you know? So it's, it's just interesting to hear people how they view it, and especially now with them coming out with these live videos and you
Yeah.
know.
I didn't even know they were doing this until you so that tells you how much I'm dialed in.
Well, it's funny because I didn't either, but the only thing that in talking about nudges is what drove me to do a live was it felt like, to your point, an intuitive nudge that I've interacted with my community and my readers so much that it almost was like, okay, but now like let's see you.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Like let's connect.
There's an authenticity to actually seeing you and hearing you speak, and, there's that human quality. I mean, yeah, there's importance there. Uh,
Right. And I think especially now, right? Because there's so many people who don't put pictures or don't do stuff. And it's like, okay, but then people are like, well, am I reading a human? Like one reader asked me, did you really work at a grocery store? Or am I just bamboozled? And I'm like, no, I really did. And that's a great question.
like, there's an app out there that you can create a podcast by just feeding it information. It will create the entire podcast. I actually have it. Like, I fed it my first book and said, "Write a podcast," and it did the whole thing. The
What?
crazy. It's crazy. And,
Wow.
like, yeah, you listen to it and it's kinda comical because it's 2 people talking, but they're just like it's Ed McMahon kinda thing. Yeah, and, like, it's so funny to listen to because it's so not real, but at times you get caught up into it and you're like, "My god, that's what a podcast sounds like." So,
Well,
stuff out there that you can create like that. So, it's good for us to be as authentic as possible and get out here and do things like this.
yeah. And it's not easy sometimes because, again, you're putting yourself in front of everybody and going, here I am.
Yeah, that is a tough thing. I had a hard time with that when I first started, writing, first started coming out with the books and stuff. But I quickly got past it because it's a passion. Like what I'm doing is a passion, and I want people to know who I am, um, and to give it the weight that I hope it deserves.
Yeah. That's a great thing to share with people because I think I hear that a lot of people of like, I'm just afraid to put myself out there or be me. And it's like, you know what? We need the unique you.
Absolutely.
We just do. And so, if we can help each other do that, why not?
There's been
And
one of us. We all have our stories, um, and you you think about like your purpose in life. Like what is the like everyone wants to know what's the secret to life? What's the secret? I think it's as you are. Whatever you feel that is the purpose of being here and fulfilling that need is it's all up to you. So why not put yourself out there?
right, because two things come to mind when you say that. The gurus that used to say like you spend your whole life searching for your purpose only to realize there never was one. It's just simply to be you and your fullest expression. And then I remember watching this young guy, a friend sent it to me on TikTok because I'm not on there. And he was talking about if you were an angel, people would still complain how loud your wings flap. You know what I mean? It made me laugh, but he's like, so flap them anyway. They
Yeah.
can cover their ears. You know what I mean? And that like just hit me was like, somebody's always going to complain about something. You're never going to please everybody. So why not just be you?
And it is hard because I mean, I'm more of an empath than I thought I was, and I found that out as I got myself out here doing these types of things. So it's sometimes it cuts a little bit,
I know.
but you just take a step back and be like, it didn't hurt that much, you know?
Well, yeah, I've had to learn too, being empathic, that what you think of me is really none of my business. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but even overly praised or, like cut through, it's like at the end of the day, I have to be okay with me.
Yes.
That's the most important person, that if I can't look at myself in the mirror and love me, I know me, I know my truth. And, just like I said, I've had people accuse me of using AI for stories on notes, and I never did. And I didn't argue. I just went, no,
Yeah.
they're true. And if that's what you want to believe, I'm not here to argue with you. So have a wonderful day.
And I always pick battles and
Well, and just know people just are out there just to do that. And so what? Because you know what? I don't want to want that one person shade the hundreds of other positive things that were shared and said and, interacted with. Like, why let that one person who just wants to throw a wrench in things, stop you? You can't. You gotta keep being you, and you got a lot to share. So we went over an hour. I apologize.
everyone seems to be hanging in there.
I know, and I thank you guys because I'm still blown away that you share your time and space with us. I don't take that lightly. I know Bernie doesn't take that lightly. So Bernie, I wanted to ask you before wrapping this up, what is something that's completely ordinary that still stops you in your tracks today?
Clouds.
Clouds, explain.
I get answer clouds. I get I'll see clouds out. Yeah, I got of clouds that are unique. The way the light reflecting off of it. Anything to do with clouds will always like bring wonder to me. Like it happens multiple times a day. Uh, Not a cloud, like a overcast day. Like it'll create something that I didn't normally see because of maybe it was too much light or too much shade or whatever. Um, it always plays its part. Like clouds are really they're probably the most unrepresented out in the like they are like people hate clouds. And I'm like, love that fast. That, yeah. And any animal. There's probably not one animal out there that I'll find wonder in somehow. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. Now I'll never look at clouds again the same way, my friend. So thank you.
It's like the 3rd chapter in my first book, I think. So,
Yes, it is. All right, my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you guys for joining this conversation. We really do appreciate it more than you know,
thank you.
and sharing this connection with us. And we'll see you on the next one, hopefully. Bye, guys.
Thank you.